Hello, and welcome to the Science for Sleepy. You've found your way into a softer kind of universe tonight, one where the stars hum lullabies and silence has structure. Our sleepy scientist is already here, curled up under a weighted blanket made of old stardust, glasses tilted askew, notebooks scattered like fallen leaves around the lab. Everything glows faintly blue, as though the sky itself has bent down to listen. Outside the observatory dome, the wind hushes through tall grass, and above, the sky is more memory than space, barely touched by stars. You've arrived just in time. If you're enjoying this quiet journey through curiosity and time, consider subscribing. There's always more to explore, gently. We'd love to know your location and time zone in the comments. Now close your eyes, if you wish. Let's go somewhere far away, not across space, but across everything. There is a place before beginning, before light, before clocks, before the thought of something, before the word before. A place that cannot be drawn because there is no space, a time that cannot be measured because there is no time, not cold, not warm, not empty, not full. A nothingness that isn't black, because black requires light not to reflect. It is not silence either, because silence only exists where sound could have been. And yet, here we are, thinking of it. What does it mean to imagine the universe before it began? Is that imagination itself already something? A ripple in the stillness? Could nothingness be so absolute that even the potential to imagine it didn't yet exist? And if so, how are we here, wondering? You might picture it now as a void, but even void suggests dimensions. You might imagine a pause, a breath held in a cosmic lung, but that presumes a rhythm. Yet, across the emptiness, if we dare to call it that, there was something stranger than mere absence. This nothing may not have been empty at all. It may have been brimming with tension, the way a tightrope holds stillness between two cliffs. Only there were no cliffs, just the potential of something flickering. Some theories say the universe didn't come from nothing. They whisper that quantum fluctuations stirred in the vacuum, and probability cracked open existence like a seed. In quantum fields, even nothing isn't quite nothing. Particles bubble in and out of momentary being, like sleep thoughts that never fully form. Others argue that nothing truly means nothing. No laws, no time, no particles, and yet somehow this total absence birthed everything. Why? How? Or perhaps neither word applies. Perhaps the universe didn't come from something. Perhaps it came from need. Not a conscious desire, but a sort of inevitability. A push toward unfolding. Like the way a story begs to be told, even if no one is yet listening. Maybe it didn't explode into existence. Maybe it unfolded. A crease in the non-space. A trembling in the non-time. A bloom with no petals, no colour, no stem, only potential. This is the mystery we sail into, not to solve, but to rest inside, to trust that wonder is a bed we can lie in, even when the answers drift just out of reach. The sleepy scientist turns the page of a notebook. It's blank. But in this kind of blankness, beginnings grow. Let's drift closer. Let's dream our way toward the first breath of creation. What does it mean to wait when there is no time? What does it mean to breathe when there is no air? Let's stay here, in this strange in-between. Not quite before, not quite becoming. It is not a pause, because even pauses need duration. This is something else. A poised stillness, a readiness humming just below detection. Imagine now a smooth, silent ocean, perfectly calm, not a wave, not a ripple, no moon to stir the tides, no light to reflect, just absolute symmetry. balance so complete that nothing could happen unless the balance faltered. And maybe that's what did happen. A whisper inside the whisper, a disturbance inside perfection. Physicists call it a quantum fluctuation, but you don't need equations to feel it. Think instead of a tight space between sleeping and waking, where your thoughts are not yet thoughts, but fog. And sometimes, from that fog, something rises, an image, a sound, the echo of a name. It means nothing. It means everything. This is how the universe may have stirred, through that same liminal trembling. A fluctuation not inside space, but of space itself. A possibility twitching into being, uncaused and unstoppable. From the quantum vacuum, a strange nothingness, not empty at all, tiny pairs of particles and antiparticles flicker into and out of reality. They annihilate each other in a breath, less than a blink. But what if, once, one of those pairs failed to cancel out? What if the cancellation didn't occur? The sleepy scientist leans over a glowing orb of simulation. It pulses gently, like the breath of a cat asleep on your chest. The screen shows ripples, virtual particles frothing in and out of potential. One holds, one doesn't vanish. A fluctuation that refuses to be forgotten. And suddenly, there is a symmetry. One becomes more than zero. Is it real? That word feels clumsy here. Instead, think. It lasts. Long enough to notice. Long enough to become. No big bang, not yet. No explosion. Just a breathless pause filled with pressure. The vacuum begins to destabilize, not in a violent crash, but like a bubble stretching, becoming too thin to hold itself together. And from that tension, something begins. Not with light, but with the space for light to exist. Not with time, but with the ticking possibility of cause and effect. And so we drift in this pre-beginning, not quite within a moment. The conditions are right. The balance is tipped. The stage has built itself from the floorboards up. There is still no sound, no colour, only this silent pressure, this swelling from the nothing that isn't. The sleepy scientist stands still, surrounded by models and imagined histories. It's a kind of reverence, the way we hold our breath before a symphony begins, before the curtain rises. The air has not moved, and yet everything is poised to follow. And you, listener, you are floating right there, in that near impossible instant before the beginning begins, before the start of light and direction, before time becomes a river instead of a question. Let yourself linger here. Let yourself become as light as thought, because soon, very soon, something will bloom, and when it does, everything we know will unfold from it. The stars, the gravity that hugs you to your bed, the atoms in your breath, the memory of childhood rain, and even the curiosity that brought you here tonight. But not yet. For one last moment, let's rest inside the breath before creation. Because even beginnings, it seems, can take their time. It happens all at once, not like thunder, not like fire. There is no sound, no blaze, just expansion, sudden, absolute. The fluctuation we followed, so small it had no width, no location, does not stay still. It swells, not outward, because there is no outside, not through space, but as space. The beginning doesn't move through the cosmos. The beginning is the cosmos. You're not standing beside it. You are within it. Everything is. The sleepy scientist adjusts a floating model, a tiny glowing dot surrounded by holographic emptiness. Then, blink, and the model balloons. The tiny dot becomes a swirling haze. It doesn't spread into a room. It becomes the room. This is cosmic inflation, not a bang, but a breath stretched beyond scale. In a trillionth of a second, the universe multiplies in size by unimaginable degrees. It grows not like a fire, but like an idea that can't be stopped. Imagine a single seed, too small to see, swelling to the size of galaxies in the blink of a moment, but not inside a field. The seed becomes the field. It is the very stage, the very floor, the very sky. Where there was nothing, there is now stretch. The coordinates of space unfold in every direction, though no direction exists yet to define them. This isn't an explosion. Explosions require a center, and the universe has none. It grows evenly, without edges. Even now, when you look into the night sky, you're seeing the stretched echo of that expansion. The oldest light you see has travelled for nearly 14 billion years, riding the current of that first inflation. But back here, in the earliest moment, it's all still wild potential. Energy is everywhere, high and hot and roiling with promise. The laws of physics, the ones that guide your falling teacup and the sun's orbit, have not fully congealed. They are still settling, still writing themselves into the fabric of what exists. Time, too, has begun, not with ticking seconds, but with the permission for before and after to finally make sense. And in this young universe, symmetry still reigns. Energy is uniform, space is smooth, a perfect balance holds. But soon, very soon, fluctuations will ripple through this uniformity, like wrinkles on a fresh-made bed. The sleepy scientist watches a projected timeline ripple like silk. Her finger traces one tiny distortion. That wrinkle, that barely not there anomaly, will become a galaxy. Another will birth a star system. Another will be the place where a small blue planet gathers dust and water and moonlight. But for now, all is heat and energy and possibility. The infant universe is a storm of pure presence, humming across itself. We cannot say where it is. There is no where. There is only what is becoming, and we cannot ask what came before it. Before only existed once time did. It is dizzying, but you don't need to grasp it all. Instead, float. Let the idea hold you. Let expansion be not a thought, but a breath in your chest. Everything you know, your bones, your memories, your soft breath on the pillow, will trace its origin to this moment, to this soft, directionless bloom. No fire, no crack, just the sudden certainty of being, from nothing, from the breathless hush. And we together drift forward into what follows, not to explain it, just to witness. Now that space exists, it begins to stretch, and stretch, and stretch again. The infant universe, once a near pointless shimmer of energy, is no longer merely blooming, it's soaring. Every point rushes away from every other point, not because it's being thrown, but because the very fabric of existence is expanding. The scale of distance itself is changing. There's no center, no edge, no anchor. You're still inside it. You always were. Imagine standing on the surface of a balloon as it inflates, not pushed outward, but carried along by the growth of the surface itself. That is how galaxies will one day part from one another, not flying through space, but carried by it. The sleepy scientist watches this play out in slow holographic motion. Spheres of space-time stretch in all directions. Their edges ripple with fluctuation, tiny imperfections that will grow into everything. But now, they are seeds in a still wild sea. The expansion is faster than light, not in defiance of physics, but because it is physics. Space can grow without limit. Nothing is moving through space at this stage. It's space itself that's unfurling, like a dream rushing outward. Within this dream, temperature is falling. Not because the universe is cooling intentionally, but because it's growing so fast that energy is thinning across the growing canvas. Think of soup stretched over miles. It gets colder, quieter, softer. At first, everything is nearly featureless, a vast, hot fog, the same in every direction. But that fog is beginning to ripple. Quantum variations, barely present during inflation, have stretched with space, like pencil marks on rubber. These ripples will become the scaffolding of the cosmos. Imagine now, as you rest, the entire universe humming gently. Tiny upswells and dips in energy everywhere, like soundless waves on a cosmic ocean. It is not chaotic, it is patterned, mathematical, inevitable. The rhythm of these fluctuations will govern the placement of stars and galaxies long before any stars exist. It is still too hot for particles to form. The soup is thick with pure energy, but that too is beginning to shift. As expansion slows, the universe reaches a new threshold. Energy begins to condense, not into matter, not yet, but into possibilities. The laws of physics are falling into place, like keys settling into locks. The four fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, are parting ways, freezing out of the original unified force. Each will govern its realm with strange elegance. The sleepy scientist lowers her head to her desk, eyes fluttering shut. Even she cannot hold every law in her mind at once, but the laws themselves will hold. That's what makes them law. And all around her, the lab, the blanket, the stars beyond the glass, it all waits patiently inside the unfolding script. Do you feel it now? This great slowing? The way the chaos is softening into order? You're not separate from it. The atoms that will become your thoughts are here in this heat, this motion, this law. You're not after the beginning, you are of it. The universe is not a thing you are in. It is a story you are made of, and the pages are still turning. Close your eyes again if you like. This next part is quieter, not in volume, but in scale. The universe is still enormous, still stretching, but now it begins to whisper instead of roar. We're no longer in the moment of wild inflation. The rapid rush has slowed. Expansion continues, but not so frantically. Space now has a rhythm, a pulse, a softness. And with this slowing, something extraordinary happens. The light begins to remember. Not the light you know yet. No sun, no flame, no glow to read by. But the first murmur of what will become all of those. You see, in this newborn cosmos, light has been trapped. Not because of darkness, but because the universe was too dense, too hot. Particles and photons, bits of energy and matter, were locked in a chaotic soup, colliding constantly, unable to move freely. Imagine trying to walk across a crowded room where everyone's moving randomly, bumping you from every direction. That's what photons experienced, jostled endlessly by a storm of charged particles. But now the temperature falls just enough. Imagine that soup, once boiling and wild, now beginning to cool, steam fading, bubbles settling, particles finally finding space between their collisions. At around 380,000 years after the beginning, so early and yet unimaginably ancient, something beautiful occurs. The universe becomes transparent. It is called recombination. Protons and electrons, once loose and separate, finally settle into each other, forming neutral hydrogen atoms, and with that, the light, those trapped photons, are set free. For the first time, light can travel, not just exist, but journey. It flies across the expanding space, stretching into the deep. Some of those ancient photons are still flying today. In fact, some are hitting you right now. The sleepy scientist smiles faintly in her half-dream. One hand reaches lazily toward the control panel, tuning into the cosmic microwave background, a signal not of today, but of then, a frozen light, a glowing echo of that moment when the universe first saw itself. It isn't bright, not anymore. It has stretched into microwaves, cooled to just a few degrees above absolute zero. But it is everywhere, a soft glow embedded into space itself. It hums quietly, not in sound, but in presence. This is the first visible moment in all of time, a kind of birth photo printed in the faintest waves of energy. Every telescope reaching deep into the sky is looking not forward, but back, to this moment of letting go, when the universe stopped being opaque and began to shine. We're drifting now in that first light, still, clear, endless. There are no stars, no planets, just the soft blue-black of emptiness, painted with invisible memory. From this moment on, the universe is no longer just expanding, it is illuminating, and in that light, the patterns seeded by quantum ripples begin to take shape. Regions slightly more dense than others begin pulling ever so gently on the particles around them. Gravity begins to do its long, patient work. Nothing rushes here. Millions of years may pass before anything new happens, but time is now flowing. Light is travelling. The fabric is ready. The stage is set. We will rest a little while in this glow. Let it wash over you. You are floating in the first moment that anything could truly be seen, even if there were no eyes to see it. Not yet, but soon. Now that the light has been freed, the universe settles into a long, quiet drift. Still expanding, still cooling, but in no hurry. We're in a dark age, though not the kind to fear. There is peace here. A gentle, silent chapter where nothing yet burns. No stars, no planets, no structures to name. Just hydrogen. Endless hydrogen, born of that first great cooling, spread like a warm fog across the cosmos. The sleepy scientist turns down the lights in the observatory. The simulation on the ceiling shows nothing at first, only a soft, pulsing void. But as her eyes adjust, she begins to see it. Faint density patterns, rippling across the fabric of space like ancient tide lines. These ripples are everything. They're not loud, they don't glow, but in time, they will call to matter, pull it gently inward, and start to build. Imagine now this universe, vast and still, filled with a sea of neutral atoms, a cosmic fog with no shore. You float through it, weightless, unhurried. There's no direction, no edge, only a low, steady hum of existence. But hidden in that stillness are the first promises of form. Regions just slightly denser than others begin to slow their expansion, tugging on themselves, gathering nearby matter. Gravity, the quiet sculptor of the universe, begins its endless task. It is a patient force. It never sleeps. Over hundreds of millions of years, it pulls atom toward atom, building invisible scaffolds, giant, lacy structures of gas that will one day birth stars. This is not chaos. It is slow, mathematical inevitability. The universe is not random. It is precise, though the patterns may look like chance to hurried eyes. There are no stars to mark the time, no planets to circle, and yet, things are beginning to change. You can almost feel it. A tension, like a note held just a second too long. The sleepy scientist leans back in her chair, drifting slightly. Above her, points of future light are calculated in silence. Their locations are not yet fixed, but the probabilities are sharpening. The dance is beginning to lead somewhere. Over the next several 100 million years, the denser regions will continue to grow. pulling more hydrogen toward their centers. The clouds compress, they spin, they begin to heat. Pressure builds, invisibly but irresistibly. And in that pressure, something extraordinary waits, something ancient, something new. We're almost at the first fire, almost, but not yet. There is still quiet. Let yourself stay in this silence a little longer. Float in the sea of hydrogen. Let the gravity pass through you, pulling ever so gently toward the promise of light. Because soon the darkness will bloom, and the first stars will open their eyes. Darkness has ruled for so long that it almost feels eternal. But no rain lasts forever, not even that of the void. The hydrogen clouds, once diffuse and drifting, have thickened. Each is a cradle now, rocking quietly in the gravity-sculpted corners of space. They are massive, light years wide, and yet still invisible to the naked eye. Nothing shines here yet, but the conditions are ripening. At the center of these clouds, pressure builds with grace and inevitability. Hydrogen atoms fall inward, colliding, heating, compressing. The gas grows hot enough to glow, then hotter still, too hot to remain only gas. And then, gently, silently, it begins. Fusion. A single hydrogen atom fuses with another, and then another. The process multiplies. Deep in the cloud's core, energy is released, not in fire, but in light. True light, at last. The first stars are born. You might imagine them as tiny pinpricks in an enormous canvas, but they are not tiny. These first stars, called population 3 stars, are giants, hundreds of times more massive than our sun. They burn bright, hot, and brief. Their lives, though brilliant, are short, but their presence changes everything. Now the universe glows, not evenly, but in scattered points of brilliance. Light breaks through the darkness, shadows form for the first time. The cosmos begins to sculpt itself not only by mass but by illumination. The sleepy scientist watches a simulation unfold. One by one, star fields begin to flicker on across the holographic dome. Not in random places, but in the densest folds of the cosmic fabric. The pattern of matter laid down by ancient quantum ripples is finally becoming visible. Each star that forms radiates energy into the surrounding hydrogen fog. That radiation starts stripping electrons away again, reionizing the universe, reversing the long sleep that followed recombination. This period is called cosmic reionization, a gradual clearing of the intergalactic haze. With each new star, the fog lifts a little more. The universe is waking. But there is more than light in this awakening. There is chemistry. In these first stars, fusion does more than shine. It transforms. Hydrogen fuses into helium, into carbon, into oxygen, the building blocks of everything to come. Still, these early stars are unstable. Their massive size makes them volatile. After only a few million years, many reach their ends, and when they die, they do not fade, they explode. The first supernova tear through space with violent elegance, scattering newly forged elements into the surrounding void. Iron, carbon, nitrogen, the dust of future worlds, the seeds of breath, the ink of memory. You are made from this, not metaphorically, literally. Every atom of calcium in your bones, every molecule of oxygen in your lungs, every trace of gold in your blood. First built here, in a star that lived before Earth existed and died before Earth had a name. Imagine now the stars blinking into existence. Some flicker and fade, some burn and erupt. But the universe no longer sleeps. It dreams now in starlight, and you are part of that dream. Now that the stars are awake, the cosmos begins to shine with new intention. Light no longer drifts from the walls of early fire, It dances, casts shadows, marks edges. We are floating now in a universe that is no longer uniform. Gravity has built contrasts. Stars have carved pockets of clarity. And between these shining points the darkness remains. But it is no longer untouched. It is a different kind of darkness now. A necessary one. One that helps shape the light. The sleepy scientist traces her finger along a vast projection. Gossamer threads stretching across the universe like veins in stone. These are the filaments of dark matter, invisible but immense. They form the scaffolding, the skeleton of what will become galaxies. We cannot see this dark matter directly. It does not shine or reflect or burn, but it tugs, it pulls, it gives structure to the luminous, and the ordinary matter, hydrogen, helium, all the elements scattered by ancient stars, flows into these threads like water into riverbeds. The stars, once scattered randomly, now begin to cluster. Gravity binds them into swirling families, vast communities of light orbiting shared centres, proto-galaxies. Imagine them blooming in slow motion, clouds spinning, coalescing, flattening into disks. Some collide, some merge, and others merely pass like ships in deep fog. All the while, the pull of dark matter keeps things moving in harmony. And in this grand ballet, something else begins to form, something gentle, yet crucial, the rhythm of rotation. These early galaxies begin to spin, tracing spirals in starlight. Not rapidly, not yet, but with a sense of pattern, of balance. Stars orbit their centers not chaotically but rhythmically, marking the beginning of structure on cosmic scales. And within these galaxies, new generations of stars are born from the debris of their ancestors. These are cooler, more stable, smaller. They carry heavier elements now: oxygen, carbon, silicon. Around these stars, disks of dust begin to circle. Not just particles now, but building blocks. Tiny clumps, pebbles, then rocks, then worlds. But we're not there yet. Not quite. We're still drifting in a young cosmos, a place of wonder and quiet urgency. The sleepy scientist pulls a translucent globe from a drawer. It shows a simulated view of a single forming galaxy, just a pocket of billions of stars among uncountable others. Within its glowing heart, there is movement. Stars dancing, clouds collapsing, supernovae flaring and fading. The story is starting to repeat itself. Birth, light, death, and dust. Each generation seeding the next. The universe no longer merely exists, it remembers, and in the remembering, it begins to build. As the galaxies continue their slow dance across the cosmos, one of them becomes the quiet stage for something rare, something fragile. We drift now into the outskirts of a modest spiral galaxy, neither the largest nor the smallest. It turns with poise, its arms wrapped loosely in starlight and gas. Dust weaves through it like golden thread through dark silk. In one of those swirling arms, far from the crowded centre, a quiet cloud begins to collapse. It is ordinary in many ways, another dense pocket of gas drawn together by gravity. But this cloud in this place at this time will become something singular. It will become a solar system, ours. The sleepy scientist leans over a new model. It glows gold and blue and deep smoky violet. This is not yet Earth, not yet the sun, just a cloud folding in on itself, drawing tighter with every rotation. It collapses slowly, spinning faster as it tightens, like a skater pulling her arms in. At the center, pressure builds until fusion ignites. A star is born. Not a giant, this one. Not like the first stars that blazed and died. This one is stable, balanced. It will live a long, quiet life. Our sun. Around it, the leftover material, dust and rock and gas, continues to spin. Gravity herds it into a disk, flat and humming with collisions. Within that disk, matter begins to clump. Tiny grains stick together. Collisions birth pebbles, then boulders. There is no haste. This takes millions of years. Some clumps grow large enough to clear paths in the dust. Planetesimals, proto-worlds, the beginnings of planets. Among them, in a quiet orbit, a world takes shape. Third from the sun. Not too large, not too hot, not too cold. Earth. But it is not the Earth you know. Not yet. It is molten, violent, shrouded in steam and haze, bombarded by remnants of the disk, asteroids and comets, and wayward fragments of almost planets. And still, it cools. Rain begins. Not a drizzle, but a deluge that lasts millions of years. Steam condenses into oceans. The crust hardens. Continents stir beneath the surface. And still, gravity holds it all together. The sun warms it gently. The moon, born of a titanic collision, steadies its tilt and tide. All of it, every atom, every spark, descended from ancient stars. The sleepy scientist sits back in her chair and watches Earth form like breath on glass. It is small from here, quiet, blue, and on its surface something waits. Something made not of stone, not of fire, but of curiosity. It's not life yet. But the ingredients are here. Water, carbon, heat, time. The recipe is almost complete, and soon the first cell will divide, and then another, and the universe, for the first time, will look back at itself through eyes that blink, but not just yet. Let's linger here. Let's breathe with this quiet world as it cools beneath a newborn sun. Now we're resting on the surface of that quiet, cooling world. Earth. It is no longer molten, no longer bombarded, though the memory of fire still lingers in the shape of volcanoes and deep ocean ridges. The sky is thick, tinged with gases unfit for lungs that don't yet exist. And yet, something is stirring. The sleepy scientist sits beside a pool, not of water as you know it, but of chemistry. Warm, shallow, shimmering with dissolved minerals and strange combinations. Lightning dances above it. UV rays from a younger sun strike its surface, and within that pool something more subtle than light is trying to begin. Imagine now the molecules, simple yet dancing. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, familiar elements rearranging, testing configurations. Bonds form, break, and reform. No intention, no plan, just possibility and motion. And from that motion, something improbable begins to take shape. A chain of molecules that can copy itself. This is not life, not yet, but it is closer than anything has ever been. Replication, mutation, persistence. These molecules will survive only if they can repeat themselves in a world of flux. The ones that do will go on. The rest will vanish. Here, in this microscopic contest, evolution begins. Not with claws or eyes or breath, but with molecules whispering in a tide pool. And then, life. Tiny, single-celled, almost invisible, but undeniably alive. Able to eat, to divide, to change. These cells drift through the oceans, absorbing sunlight or feeding on minerals around deep-sea vents. Some float freely, others cling to rocks. They are ancient, and they are everywhere. It takes billions of years before they do anything that seems large. But all the while, they evolve, slowly, in silence. Some begin to share their internal structures, organelles, nuclei, partnerships formed inside membranes, a kind of teamwork. The sleepy scientist zooms in on a screen. She watches one cell engulf another, not to destroy it, but to house it. One becomes two, then one again, but stronger. This moment, this engulfing, will give rise to all plants, all animals, all you. Earth transforms in return. These tiny organisms begin changing the air itself. They breathe out oxygen. At first, it accumulates invisibly, then rapidly, transforming the atmosphere and opening the door for future life forms that will need it. They do not know they are changing the world. They do not even know they are, but they persist, and the world softens beneath their work. Oceans turn blue, the sky becomes breathable, the land waits, bare and empty, ready to be touched by green. Everything from here will come from these cells, tree bark and blood, feathers and fur, fingers and thought. But for now, life is still simple, still small, still whispering in water, and yet it is enough. Enough to carry forward the story of stars and dust. Enough to begin remembering where we came from. Now that life has taken hold, it begins to build in slow, deliberate layers, not in leaps, but in quiet increments. You're floating again, gently above a prehistoric ocean. The water is calm, sun-warmed, and dense with life invisible to the eye. Microorganisms drift in spirals and pulses. Some feed on sunlight, others feed on each other, but something is changing. Slowly, cells are learning to work together, not in passing, but in permanence. Colonies form, chains, sheets, spheres. Some cells begin to specialize, one for movement, one for sensing, one for feeding. And here, in this elegant cooperation, complexity begins, multicellular life. This is where size becomes possible, where shape and function start to matter, where one part of a living thing can differ from another and still serve a shared survival. The sleepy scientist watches time lapse across a projected sea floor. The colors deepen. The water teems with strange bodies, soft, frond-like, folded into ribbons, blinking with primitive awareness. They are not yet fish, not yet insects or plants or anything you'd name, but they are alive in a new way, structured, layered, purposeful. This age of complexity accelerates when oxygen levels spike again, clearing the path for more energetic life. With more oxygen, organisms can grow, move, and evolve faster. Some develop simple eyes, patches that sense light and dark. Others grow tails to swim or mouths to eat instead of absorb. Then comes a moment unlike any before it. The Cambrian explosion. A bloom of biodiversity, almost chaotic in its abundance. Animals with shells, with claws, with symmetry, with plans. Some are ancestors of nothing living. Others will branch, diversify, and fill every future ocean and forest. Predators appear, so do prey. For the first time, life begins to flee, to chase, to defend. The balance of survival becomes a game of speed, of shape, of wit. And as these creatures fill the oceans, some start to creep onto land, slowly, painfully. First the plants, mosses, ferns, creeping green tendrils that tame the raw stone. Then arthropods, ancestors of spiders and insects, skitter across the softening earth. The land, once silent, begins to stir. Now picture it. Forests of towering ferns, insects the size of birds, amphibians gasping in the thick air as they make their first uncertain steps onto muddy banks. The sleepy scientist marks these steps with quiet awe. She doesn't narrate them aloud. She lets them happen. Evolution is not rushed. It unfolds like mist, drifting, circling, returning. Dinosaurs will come later. Mammals too. But right now, the Earth is learning movement, learning breath. The oceans still hold most of life. The deep places where sunlight barely reaches remain ancient and unchanged. But above, everything becomes dynamic. Cycles emerge, weather and water, sun and seed. Earth is no longer just alive, it is ecological. Each form of life shapes the world in which the next must live. Each choice, a shell, a leaf, a wing, echoes forward, and you, curled up beneath your blanket, listening. You carry all of this in your body, the legacy of cells that divided, the echo of creatures that crawled, the memory of water, of breath, of becoming. The earth is no longer silent. We stand now among towering beasts, lush forests, shifting continents. Time has passed, not in decades or centuries, but in hundreds of millions of years. Evolution has sculpted life into titans, creatures that roar, that soar, that thunder across the land. Dinosaurs. They are not myths, though they feel like dreams. Their bones are buried in mountains and deserts. Their breath once stirred the same atmosphere you now inhale. Some are hunters, fierce and precise. Others graze in herds, their bodies like walking hills. Their skin is leathery, feathered, scaled. Their colours? We can only imagine. The sleepy scientist imagines green, ochre, deep blue, patterned like forests and shadows, and beneath them smaller lives continue. Insects, lizards, the early ancestors of birds, even mammals, tiny, quick, furred, scurry underfoot, surviving in the margins. Above all this, the earth itself is alive in its own way. Plates drift, mountains rise, oceans divide. The continents slowly stretch and pull apart. The land reshapes, setting the stage again and again for life to adapt or fade. And then, without warning, silence, not gradual, sudden, final, a global event. A rock from space, 6 miles wide, strikes Earth with unimaginable force. The sky burns, fires rage, ash clouds rise, sunlight fades, temperatures plummet. The dinosaurs, the great walkers and flyers, vanish. But extinction is never only an ending. It is also an opening, a reshuffling, an invitation. Those small, warm-blooded creatures hiding in the shadows, mammals, step forward into the emptiness. They spread, diversify, grow, and from among them, primates, tree dwellers with clever fingers and curious eyes. The sleepy scientist watches one such creature cling to a branch. It blinks slowly in the dusk. It doesn't yet know what it is, but it learns. Hands become tools, movement becomes rhythm, thought becomes memory, memory becomes language. This is not the beginning of humans, not yet, but the path is laid. Still, Earth changes. Ice ages come and go. Seas rise and fall. Species emerge and vanish. But the story now has momentum, because somewhere, in a quiet stretch of savanna or forest, a creature looks at another and wonders what it is thinking. That is where everything turns. Not tools, not fire, but reflection. The ability to imagine, to remember yesterday, to fear tomorrow, to ask, why? That question, soft, fragile, impossible, will one day reach the stars. But for now, it rests behind the eyes of a small, curious creature standing upright under a changing sky. And the stars above it, they are the same ones that formed in the ancient dark when light first found its way. The creature looks up. Now, under those stars, something awakens that the universe has never held before. Consciousness, still young, still flickering, steps into the open. Not in thunder, not in proclamation, but in slow, careful wandering. A glance upward, a hand raised to the sky. We are among the early humans now, their faces lit by firelight, their thoughts shaped by rivers, stones, wind. They walk upright, they migrate, they adapt, they carry the sky with them in their minds. The sleepy scientist dims the observatory and lets the holograms vanish. All that remains is a single flame, flickering beside a model of Earth. The quiet amber glow mirrors the first campfires, small, warm, and powerful. Fire is more than heat, it is memory. With fire, early humans cook food, soften roots, survive the cold, but they also gather around it. They share stories, songs, plans. Around fire, imagination becomes communal. And then, tools. Not just for smashing or scraping, but for shaping. Spears, awls, thread, nets. Each one carrying the memory of how it was made. Passed from hand to hand, generation, and through this, time becomes layered. Not just lived, but inherited. Language follows, not in syllables at first, but in gesture and rhythm. Over time it grows, names are given, things become symbols, the world becomes something that can be described, and then, art. The sleepy scientist gazes at cave walls etched with ochre and ash, hands stenciled in red, animals galloping across stone. These images are not survival, they are expression, the mind reflected outward. In this moment, humanity begins to tell itself stories. The stars above are no longer only distant lights, they are signs, patterns, clocks, gods, paths. The moon becomes a cycle, the sun a marker. Seasons are counted, crops are planted, civilizations rise, slowly. Riverbanks host cities, clay becomes tablets, myths are carved from memory, laws are etched in stone, we invent calendars, we learn to write, and with writing, memory becomes permanent. Now, ideas can live beyond the body. We record, we measure, we remember. The stars are no longer simply watched, they are mapped, and through it all, humans look upward and wonder, where did we come from? Why is there something rather than nothing? What was there before the beginning? And those questions, born from dust, stardust, curiosity, breath, are the echo of the universe reflecting on itself. You, listener, are part of that echo, a continuation of all that has unfolded since nothing first stirred. You are a quiet corner of the cosmos, thinking. The stars have always been above us, but now we begin to reach for them, not with hands, not yet, but with thought, with questions shaped by centuries of sky-watching and seasons tracked by moonlight. You're drifting now through the ancient world, a desert night, a clear sky, stone temples aligned with solstice shadows, astronomers in robes measuring the heavens with simple tools yet uncanny precision. The sleepy scientist watches the ancients build meaning from movement. Venus rising in the dawn, Orion returning with winter, the sun climbing higher each day until summer crests and falls again. Patterns within patterns. We're no longer just surviving, we are observing, charting, naming. The cosmos becomes a clock, a calendar, a compass. Civilizations grow. In Babylon, records of eclipses etched in clay. In China, comets tracked with careful reverence. In Mesoamerica, calendars that count far beyond a single lifetime. And always these observations are woven with stories, cosmic dragons, star-born gods, great wheels of time. The universe is not just a place, it is a story we're telling ourselves, but then, slowly, something shifts again. In Greece, thinkers begin to ask not just what the heavens do, but why. They imagine Earth not as the centre of the universe, but as one planet among many. They sketch orbits, they propose atoms, unseen particles making up everything. They speak of motion, inertia, symmetry. Still, centuries pass. Questions linger unanswered. The sky remains vast, unknowable, until the telescope. Galileo lifts a glass tube toward Jupiter and sees moons orbiting another planet. A revelation that cracks open the idea of a geocentric universe. The sleepy scientist watches this moment unfold like candlelight in a cavern. The known world expands. We begin to map the Milky Way. We find new planets. We measure the speed of light. We detect invisible radiation. And then, with Newton, gravity finds its voice. Not a force given by gods, but a law, universal, elegant. An apple falls, the moon orbits, a planet turns, all guided by the same invisible thread. The cosmos is no longer mythic alone. It is mathematical, predictable, beautiful in its logic. We build machines to measure more precisely. We capture starlight in glass plates. We learn that stars are made of the same elements we find on Earth, and with that, the boundary between out there and in here begins to dissolve. The sleepy scientist closes her eyes. Above her, a star map unfurls, each point a story, each nebula a birthplace. We're beginning to understand not just what the universe is, but how it behaves. And yet, even now, we carry wonder in both hands, because every answer opens new questions. Every discovery reveals a deeper mystery. You, listening in the dark, are part of that unfolding. A mind born of stardust, dreaming back toward the stars. The more we learn, the deeper the questions grow. We're no longer content to observe the stars, we want to understand their origin. Not just how they move, but how they came to be. And so, we turn our gaze not only outward, but backward, toward the beginning. The sleepy scientist now drifts among swirling projections of cosmic history. Here, in the gentle hum of data, something astonishing begins to emerge. A picture of the universe, not just as it is, but as it was. We begin to see the cosmos as a timeline, a story with a beginning, and that beginning is not ancient mythology. It is measurable, traceable, detectable. It begins with a glow, not bright anymore but constant, an afterimage of creation itself, the cosmic microwave background. Discovered accidentally by radio astronomers, this faint signal is not from stars or galaxies, but from the moment the universe first became transparent. It is the oldest light, still travelling, still touching us. It is evidence that the universe once was hot, dense, and smaller than anything we can truly picture. And with that, we build a model, the Big Bang. Not an explosion, but an expansion. Not from somewhere, but everywhere. Space itself unfolding. Time beginning. Matter emerging from energy. The sleepy scientist floats through these ideas gently, each one held in a quiet reverence. Because to trace the origin of the universe is to ask how something came from nothing. What was before the Big Bang? We don't know. Maybe there was no before. Maybe time itself began with the bang. Still, we ask. And while we ask, our tools sharpen. Satellites map ancient radiation. Super colliders probe the earlier states of matter. Equations suggest dimensions beyond our senses. We discover dark matter, not by seeing it, but by what it does. Its gravity shapes galaxies. Its silence hides its nature. And beyond that, dark energy. A force not pulling things together but pushing them apart, driving the expansion of the universe faster and faster. These aren't gaps in knowledge. They are frontiers, places where science becomes poetry, where logic brushes against mystery, and within all of it, life, still here, still asking. We've built spacecraft that sail past Neptune, rovers that crawl across Mars, telescopes that peer billions of years into the past, and still we wonder, why does the universe exist at all? Why these laws? Why this balance? The sleepy scientist smiles, because the asking is part of the answer. You're not separate from the cosmos. You are its expression, its memory, its question, its reflection. A way for the universe to become aware of itself, to hold its own mystery like a stone in the palm. You're not outside this story. You are the story. Now the universe no longer hides its age. We've learned to read its past written in light, every star a record, every element a signature, every galaxy a brushstroke in a vast unfolding mural. But something else has begun, something deeper than knowledge. Consciousness, no longer limited to survival, has begun to turn inward. We ask not only where we came from, but who we are. The sleepy scientist turns a slow circle in the observatory. The holographic stars begin to fade, replaced by neurons, flashing, branching, whispering in the dark. Inside the brain of a human being, the complexity rivals galaxies. 100 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others, a universe inside a skull. And yet, it's more than machinery. Consciousness is not just circuits firing, it is awareness, memory, imagination, the ability to think about thinking, to wonder about the self, to gaze at the stars and feel longing, even without knowing why. Some say this is a fluke, an accident. But accidents do not dream. Imagine now a child staring at the night sky, not afraid, not even asking questions yet, just feeling something vast, something tender, something almost remembered. That feeling is consciousness blooming. It allows us to grieve, to love, to hope, to create music that echoes emotions too large for speech, to write poems about atoms, to make art about silence. It is here that science and spirit meet, not in opposition, but in awe. You're a collection of stardust arranged for a short time into a pattern that can think, feel, and care. And even more strangely, you know that. The universe has taken on the shape of a being who can ask, "What am I?" And the answer is not simple. It is not even one answer. You are the dust of stars, yes, but you are also the question they left behind, and the song that forms when that question is spoken out loud. The sleepy scientist closes her eyes, and her breathing slows. In her dream, the neurons of the brain light up like constellations. Ideas pass between them like comets. Consciousness is not noise, it is music. Quiet music, curious music. And you're listening to it now, not with your ears, but with your being. Now the universe has found its own mirror. It gazes into itself not through reflection, but through thought, through eyes that blink, through minds that wander, through people like you, listening now in the dark. The sleepy scientist watches the stars fade, replaced by images of us. Cities lit from above like constellations, roads like arteries, rivers like veins, humanity, tiny, fragile and luminous, spread across the surface of one pale blue world. And from this world, we look outward and inward and back. Every satellite launched, every telescope aimed, every question asked is the universe examining itself, delicately, persistently, without finality. We have become its memory, its imagination, its experiment in awareness. Think about this. The carbon in your bones was made in a star. The calcium in your teeth, forged in ancient light. The iron in your blood, born in a supernova's final cry. You're not made of stars metaphorically. You're made of stars literally. But now you're more than ingredients. You are arrangement. You are attention. And that attention is powerful. It allows you to wonder not just what the universe is, but why it exists at all. It allows you to sit quietly in the night and feel awe, not as fear, but as recognition. That feeling when your chest expands at the sight of the moon, when a piece of music moves you to stillness, when you dream of something larger than yourself. That is the universe speaking through you. The sleepy scientist watches a strand of DNA rotate slowly in a display. It spirals like galaxies do, pattern repeating in scale and structure. This isn't coincidence, it's consistency. The same laws that form the stars form your breath, and you, unlike the stars, can notice, can ask. You can stare at the dark sky and know what it is, know how it formed, and still feel that gentle ache, the mystery that remains. You are the question and the witness, the dreamer and the dreamed. The universe has found a way to wonder about itself, and it chose you to do it. Now, at the edge of everything we know, we return to the question that never left us. How did all of this begin? From nothing. We've journeyed through expansion, through starlight, through dust and life and mind. But the beginning, true nothingness, remains elusive, like a thought you almost remember in a dream. The sleepy scientist drifts in her chair, surrounded by a quiet hum of models. Galaxies swirl overhead, neurons flicker gently below, all of it moving, breathing, unfolding. But where did it come from? Some say there was never true nothing, just quantum uncertainty, a sea of potential, a vacuum pregnant with fluctuations. Others say that even time had to be born, that before the Big Bang is not just unknowable, but meaningless. And still others ask if this universe is just one of many, a multiverse bubbling through an endless foam, each with its own rules, its own rhythm. But perhaps the question itself is flawed. Perhaps nothing is a word we invented for a condition we cannot truly imagine, because every time we try to picture it, we fill it with something. Darkness, silence, space, thought. Yet all those are already things. What if the universe didn't come from nothing, but from possibility? Not a place, not a time, but a condition, like stillness waiting to become movement, like silence waiting to become song. Maybe the universe didn't begin. Maybe it became a slow unfolding not of objects, but of relationships, of contrast and connection. Maybe nothing was simply the first note, too soft to hear, but deep enough to set the rhythm for everything to come. And maybe that's enough. Not a perfect answer, but a beautiful one. Because the mystery was never meant to be solved. It was meant to be felt. And tonight, as you breathe in the dark, know that your breath is part of that rhythm, that unfolding, that whisper. The universe began, and it brought you with it, not apart from the stars, not beneath them, but as one of them, learning to listen. Now, let everything grow quieter. Let the questions soften. Let the edges of thought melt like stars disappearing into dawn. You've followed the unfolding gently, patiently, from the hush before time to the hum of your own breath, from a universe without colour or sound to the rhythm of language, of cells, of curiosity. You're not an afterthought of creation. You are its continuation, a flicker of awareness shaped by light and silence. As you lie still now, in the calm of your room, know that the atoms in your chest remember fusion, that your heartbeat echoes the pulse of ancient stars, that your stillness is not emptiness, but presence. The sleepy scientist dims the last lights. The observatory goes quiet. A soft wind passes. Outside, a few stars linger like lullabies. You're safe here, held not by walls or ceiling, but by gravity, by warmth, by belonging. Let the mystery be your blanket. Let the wonder rest beside you. There is nothing to answer now, only to be. You are part of it all, the dreaming and the waking, the stardust and the silence, the breath and the breathless beginning. Sleep now. The universe is still unfolding, and so are you.